Hello and welcome everybody to a brand new episode of r/ProRevenge. My name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to bringing you guys today's top stories. Before I do, however, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, as well as make sure you've got notifications turned on, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. Our first story of the evening comes to us from Josie. It comes to us from Josie 1 month ago, and it's called "How I Messed Up My Nasty Neighbor's Marriage." My mother and I moved back to Germany for a year after her and my dad had split up. She had been a housewife for most of their marriage, and even quit university because she got pregnant with me, and my father, who was quite a bit older, had a good job and was able to support her well. So when we moved back to Germany and stayed at my aunt's, my mother didn't have many qualifications, but she did courses at night and worked during the day to take care of me, and I'm proud of her. I also didn't want to be too much of a burden on her, and I like to be independent, so I took up small jobs like babysitting. One of our neighbors, who were good friends of my aunt and quite well off, would pay me quite a lot to mind their kids. I almost became like a cheap nanny and would spend some weekends just minding them all day. While I liked getting paid and the children were lovely, I really didn't like the couple. See, my mother is German and my dad is Jamaican. A mixing this couple didn't approve of, and the wife would occasionally say offensive things in roundabout ways that made me being half Jamaican or my dad. Like if I made a mistake, she would say I need to listen to my native half, meaning German. She later changed it to brighter since it was too on the nose. She would also take digs at my mother in the most passive-aggressive of ways, always going on about her PhD and being a professor and how she's glad her life didn't get sidetracked by bad influences, meaning my mother ending up with a Jamaican. It was constantly like this and worse. I think it bothered me more than it bothered my mother, who never let what others say get to her. Now the husband. Where do I start? He would always eye me, like constantly staring at me and mentally undressing me. I tried to ignore it for the most part, but I knew his wife sometimes caught it, and it pissed her off, which made me sort of like it. Whoa, Lois, whoa. Let's keep the weird shit to a minimum, dude. He would always say suggestive things, and I'm pretty sure that he paid me far more than he normally would, and that pissed her off even more. I'm pretty sure if it weren't for him, she would have fired me, but he's clearly the dominant of the two. I did think of quitting, but they had a niece who would visit often, and she was about my age, and we got along well. So really, I just kept on good terms with the family because they were my neighbors and paid well, but mostly because of their niece. When my mother announced we were leaving Germany again because she got an opportunity abroad, the husband started to get a bit more aggressively suggestive, and his wife got nastier. I was starting to get pissed off. Her husband started following and interacting with my social media more. He would also send me memes which would turn into text messages that went on late. I feel bad because I indulged partly because I was afraid and didn't want to rock the boat, and partly because I knew it was pissing off his wife. He accidentally sent me a pic of him topless in a towel once, and then immediately said it was for his wife. One day, I was in their pool with their niece. The husband joined us, and while play fighting in the water, he came up behind and accidentally slid his hands under my bikini top and copped a feel. At this stage, I told myself I was going to do something to get them back before we left Germany. At dinner that night with him, his wife, and my family, I joked about a watered-down version of the pool incident at the dinner table. Everyone thought it was just an off comment and laughed it off. But he went very quiet, and I could tell despite laughing, his wife wanted to kill him with her eyes. Me and their niece got into an argument after that because she said my joke was inappropriate, and I said that her uncle was inappropriate, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but also not really. It's not like I had proof either because I deleted all of his messages. After that, we weren't as close anymore. You'd think this incident would have stopped my neighbor from being suggestive, but he only got worse and would openly say things like, "Let me squeeze," but as a joke. So on my last day babysitting, while the kids were asleep, I stayed in their pool with the niece. The husband came out and sent her off to a local shop to get something for him, and he said he had a bad back. Yeah, right. Just wanted to be alone in the pool with me. He got in the pool and started play fighting in the water again. I got out for a few minutes, and while upstairs, saw his wife cycling toward the house, and straight away, I got an awful idea, but right then didn't care. I ran back for the pool and took off my bikini top. I told him, "Is that what you were waiting for then?" And he grinned like an idiot. I jumped in the water and waited till the very last moment before letting him reach me. I asked to get on his shoulders, and he let me on. In mere seconds, his wife walked out into the back garden, seeing me on his shoulders topless. She was speechless and paler than pale. He froze, and when she managed to finally say something, he lied and said the straps off my top must have come off and he didn't notice. But I just said in a laughing voice that we were just playing. Without saying a word, his wife just turned and walked back into the house. He got out of the pool and went after her. He didn't say much at all to me after, and paid me 5 times the amount, saying to just forget the pool. That was the last day I saw that man. After moving, I learned from my aunt that shortly after we left, the couple went into marriage counseling, which according to her was weird because they were the perfect power couple of the neighborhood and were the backbone of the community, never having major issues. I feel sorta bad for it because of the kids and that I escalated things too far, but honestly, a part of me says F that couple. I haven't told my mother all this yet, not because she'd be angry at me, but because she'd be upset that I went through this alone. Our next story of the evening is by Slickhead Slinger 2 months ago, and it's called Revenge of the Construction Workers. I'm a teacher, and when I was younger, I would take summer jobs to supplement my income. One summer, I had worked for a bricklayer named Jerry and heard an amazing story. I worked for Jerry in the mid-90s, so the story either happened in the early 90s or in the 1980s. Here goes. The setting for the story was a community of small rural towns which had only one brick contractor. Jerry began his career as a bricklayer working for this contractor, a real jerk. A jerk and a jerk's son, adult working the business with his father. He'd harass, belittle, and humiliate all their employees on a regular basis. No work was ever good enough, and employees were told they weren't worth what they were paid. Not only did Jerk mistreat his employees, but he was equally rude to other subcontractors and to the general contractors who hired him. Since he was the only bricklayer in the community, there was nothing anyone could do about it. Needless to say, the turnover rate for the brick business was very high. The only person that stuck with Jerk in the company was Jerry. Jerry told me that his father had instilled a self-confidence in him that Jerry could do anything he set his mind to, and that he should not evaluate himself according to what others said, but rather by the facts. Although Jerry was belittled by Jerk and Son, as were all other employees, Jerry was becoming a very good bricklayer. Jerry knew he was good. Jerk knew Jerry was good, but Jerk didn't know that Jerry knew he was good. Not only was Jerry a good bricklayer, he was very respectful to the boss who disrespected him. Jerk thought that Jerry was a naive pushover who was buying his head games. This would prove to be a huge mistake on his part. One day, Jerry was doing an exceptionally good job of laying brick. Not only was his craftsmanship amazing, he was laying brick at a high rate of speed so that he was making his boss lots of money. Of course, Jerk and Son were belittling his work as though he was doing the very opposite. This scenario was being observed by the general contractor of the project. After the workday, the general contractor asked Jerry to stay behind so he could talk to him, as did every other construction worker in the community. General contractor hated working with Jerk. General contractor told Jerry he had heard Jerk and Son belittling him and had told him that he disagreed with everything Jerk was saying. He asked Jerry if he had ever considered going into business for himself. Jerry said he would like to do that someday. General contractor then said he'd like to loan Jerry the money to buy a mixer, the most expensive piece of equipment needed to start a brick business. If Jerry would indeed said start business, the only hitch was that Jerry would need to pay for the mixer whenever he could and that he would subcontract under general contractor. Jerry agreed to those terms and prepared to begin his new venture. Jerry respectfully told Jerk and Son his plans and gave his notice. The two mocked Jerry ruthlessly and laughed him to scorn. Jerk told Jerry, "You'll be back in 2 months begging to return to your job. You'll never make it as a subcontractor." Well, 2 months later, rather than collapsing as Jerk predicted, Jerry was still in business and going strong. 1 year later, Jerry's business was booming, and a drunk jerk showed up at Jerry's house and begged him to come back to work with Jerk and Son. "Jerry, you're the best employee I ever had. Why don't you ever tell me that when I was working with you?" Jerry said. Jerk couldn't answer the question, and Jerry obviously didn't accept the offer for employment. 2 years after beginning his entrepreneurial adventure, Jerry had heard that Jerk and Son went out of business. Jerry said that he never intended to harm Jerk and Son when he accepted General Contractor's offer. He said he was just looking back on things and realized he had become Jerk's greatest nightmare. I can't say that General Contractor intended no harm. I thought the most amazing part of this story was about how Jerry maintained his self-esteem in spite of all the ridicule. I also gained a respect for Jerry's father, who instilled an unshakable self-confidence in Jerry. Edit. I contacted Jerry today, after 20 years, to let him know how highly you thought of him. He reminded me that his father was wheelchair-bound and accomplished so much in spite of his handicap. It was his father's overcoming huge obstacles that made Jerk's words seem to be such a minor obstacle to overcome. And there you have it, folks.
The end of the epics!
If you like these stories, be sure to leave a like on the video, as well as make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you could stay up to date with all future videos. As always, my name's Ryan, the voice behind Reddit Voice, the official host here on the channel, uploading just about every single day, and I look forward to seeing you guys in tomorrow's video.